if you played with MLK today, would you dunk on?
Yes.
That was brilliant.
And all of them said yes. And I was surprised because I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Oh no, except for CJ. CJ said, I'm not dunker, but I cross him up and hit a 3 in his face.
Right. No respect.
Right.
Yeah, there's no decorum on the court.
Right.
This project came about because Afshin and I and Jesse, we've actually worked for years with the athlete Tommy Smith, who in 1968 did the salute of the Olympic Games. And one of the things we do is help him start his foundation. And every year there's a foundation gala. And a couple years back, Ambassador Andrew Young was the honoree. And he got on stage and he says, Tommy, did I ever tell you the time that Dr. King and I used to play basketball to connect with kids in the movement? And so I'm the Asian guy in the back of the house, and I dropped my fork, and I'm just like, what did I just hear? And so I literally navigated the tables and ambushed Ambassador Young before he got into his car, told him I had never heard that before, and I would love to have the opportunity to tell that story on film. And he said, I love basketball, I love Dr. King, I love Tommy, of course, let's do it.
It's a weird line of work because there's like a status attached to it, and also recognize it's probably one of the only lines of work where you meet people at a party and they, what do you do? And you say you're an actor, and they're kind of, no. Or like, what are you in? You tell, and you give them your resume. Suddenly, you're now auditioning for their validation, and you name a project, and they're like, nah, I haven't seen that. It's not a yes or no question. I'm telling you what I do for a living. So that can happen.
We started with knowing that we had this really great story of Martin Luther King Jr. playing basketball that we thought that not many people had heard. Yeah, and everyone knew, and a lot of people know that President Obama enjoyed basketball and played basketball. Hearing from Mike Strautmanis and Reggie Love more of the details and some of the behind the scenes was really great. But through the process, we actually did interview a few other NBA players, aside from Jerry West, some current NBA players. And really when it came down to like honing into the medium of documentary short, so it sort of became the film that you can see now. But I think there were a lot of discoveries along the way. And a myriad of stories about how basketball has been used historically, as connective tissue in movement making and community building. Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to Glenn's point, we interviewed everyone from CJ McCollum, who's the NBPA executive director, all folks that I worked with. I worked at the NBA for 6.5 years, leading player development, and I lived in the bubble. And during that time in the bubble, I helped to, it was horrible. During COVID. Yeah, no, it was during COVID. Literally, all they fed you was Mickey Mouse cookies. It was like the worst, but just take that off.
Mickey Mouse cookie?
It's horrible. You lived in Disney.
Wait,
and
is
they
it
gave
cookie
you
in the shape of Mickey Mouse?
Yeah, and hot dogs. That's what they were feeding us. When you're in that type of environment with a bunch of NBA players who do not want to live in a bubble and be sequestered after watching George Floyd get murdered, it felt wrong. So they were in there saying, we're basically in a cage, we're basically in jail. You're not allowed to leave, and if you leave, you don't get a paycheck. So having that experience and living amongst that experience, the only thing I could do is, let me figure out how to motivate them. And the only thing you can motivate them to do is let's vote, let's change the laws. Like what can we do to make a difference as our own individual people? And I remember standing in the hallway, and guys would go to practice, and I'd be like, please register to vote. This is the way we make a difference. And so, taking that experience and the work that we did in the bubble and afterwards with some other work, it was really, really not lost on us that we needed to interview those guys to talk about that experience. So to Glenn's point, we have so much footage of Michelle Roberts and just many, many others talking about what that meant to be part of that movement, because we saw what happened with the country. The players decided to take a stand, and then the whole country followed suit. So to not include that is tough. And so to have someone, a director like Glenn, who's so amazing and can see the vision of what needs to be in a film like this to ensure that it's right on time for what we need right now. Who could have imagined that we're airing during MLK's birthday week? What I do appreciate is that many of the men have given credit to the women of the movement. So they went to the WNBA players and asked them how they were able to take a stand and be strategic during those times. And so they're getting the guidance from the women. We all know that they are the ones that led the way. We also know that women don't get the level of publicity that the male athletes do. Obviously that's changing a bit. And I, for one, am very excited to see that in all these different ways. But we know that they have been at the forefront of this for many, many years.
There was also, Glenn made a choice in the film outside of the documentary subjects. We open the film with a young boy walking in, and it ends that baton being passed to a young girl. So outside of the subject of the documentary world, there's a bit of symbolism there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I coach my daughter's team, so I play with her, and I play somewhat regularly with friends and never run.
When I met President Obama in the Oval Office, I was sitting in the lobby, and his voice, I heard him. He was coming to get us, and his voice started to get louder. And when a voice of President Obama gets louder, it's usually because I'm walking away from the TV or closer to the TV. But to have the voice get louder, I'm like, he's coming.
It's happening.
It's happening. You know, oh, it was that moment.
When I met Obama too, I literally got weak in the knees, which was like a weird thing. I didn't know that was a real thing. Holy shit, I'm getting weak in the knees.
So Obama, same thing. I remember I worked for him, but I remember he walked down the hallway when I did an event with him and Jay-Z and Beyonce, and he came down the hallway and he was like, hey, and I know he's not talking to me. I know he's talking to like Beyonce. And he was like, no, I'm talking to you. And I was like, and he just said, thank you. Like, I really appreciate, I knew this was an event that you did. And he just wanted to like let me know that he knew it was something that I put together. And at that moment, having J and B look at me and be like, you go, girl. I was like, I'm now like, the trifecta. And there's a photo. I have a photo of it, of her like leading in and being like,
and he's
right,
fainting.
yeah, exactly. I was like, wow. So yeah, but he does have that effect.
We were on stage. We've hung out a few times. He's one of those people where you're just like, oh, that's what charisma is.
Yeah.
It's a word that's thrown around a lot, but yeah, I've had the pleasure of meeting him and Michelle, equally impressive, of course.
Could anyone here beat him in basketball, you think?
I could take him probably. I think just it's age. Yeah.
So what was kind of surprising for me, the number of NBA players that we interviewed, and one of the questions Glenn was asking them was, if you played with MLK today, would you dunk on?
Yes.
That was brilliant.
And all of them said yes. And I was surprised because I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Oh, no, except for CJ. CJ said, I'm not dunker, but I cross him up and hit a 3 in his face.
Right. No respect.
Yeah, there's no decorum on the court.
Right.
There's no prisoners.